It began with a light that no one touched. Not the clean white glow of the other floors, but a sickly orange, like the last ember in a dying fire. At 3:12 a.m., the elevator in St. Anne's lit up for the third floor. The hospital had not used that floor in years. The button was covered with tape. No patient rooms were assigned there. The stairwell to it had been sealed behind cinder block, yet the elevator still called to it. Nurse Arlene Jacobson stood in the hallway holding a tray of medications. She watched the light on the panel glow without reason. She pressed the ground floor button, but nothing responded. The lift began to rise on its own. The camera footage, the one piece they never fully erased, caught her looking up, confused. When the doors opened, she stepped forward. She didn't hesitate. She didn't look back. She walked into the hallway beyond, and she never returned. That was the first. Over the next 6 nights, it happened again. 14 nurses in total would vanish the same way, always alone, always after 3:00 a.m., always to the same place. At first, the night staff laughed about it. They called it the third floor special, a joke to keep the fear at bay. But by the 4th disappearance, the joke died. The administration issued no statement, only locked the stair access to the upper levels and quietly reassigned the remaining night shift staff to other wings. The third floor, they claimed, had been sealed years earlier for renovations, for mold, for safety hazards. But the elevator still went there. One janitor, Curtis Lang, swore he had seen one of them after she vanished. He had taken the freight elevator by mistake. The doors opened to a hallway lined with dark patient rooms, lit only by the dim red of emergency lights. At the far end stood Nurse Thompson, motionless, facing into a room. He called her name. She did not turn. She did not move. She stood there as if waiting for something to answer her from the darkness inside. When he turned to leave, the lights went out. Curtis never worked another shift. He would not speak of what happened in the dark. No next of kin came forward for any of them. No funerals were held. Their lockers were emptied. Their names were removed from the staff list. They were simply gone. But there was one who survived. Her name was Miriam Ralston. She had worked nights for 6 years, never missing a shift. She was stern, dependable, and always wore a small golden sparrow pin on her collar. It was her talisman, she said, something to remind her that someone was always watching. The night she almost vanished began like any other. At 2:59 a.m., she stepped into the elevator, holding a tray of blood samples. She pressed the button for the first floor, but the panel didn't respond. All the lights dimmed except one. The button for floor 3 glowed steadily. She reached for the door-open button. That was when she heard it. A whisper close to her ear, though she was alone. She never remembered the exact words, only that it made her want to go upstairs. Her hand moved toward the button on its own, but at the last moment she jumped back, slammed the emergency stop, and screamed into her pager until someone forced the shaft doors open from the floor below. When they pulled her out, her lips were moving, though she made no sound. Later, in the ER, she said the word she'd been repeating over and over. They're not gone. They're still on the 3rd floor, but they don't remember being nurses anymore. Within 48 hours, her personnel file was erased. Officially, she had transferred to another facility. No paperwork existed to prove it. Her locker was scrubbed clean. Her name was not spoken again. 2 nights later, a CNA on break near the maintenance hallway heard humming. A woman's voice, a melody she did not recognize. She followed it to the old freight elevator. The doors were open just enough to see inside. Pinned to the wall was a bent, rusted golden sparrow pin. It was warm to the touch. After that night, even the staff refused to ride the elevator. The 3rd floor button was taped over, but some nights a fingerprint would appear in the dust, and the orange light would glow again. That was when a man named Joel Cray, the head of security and a former paramedic, began to dig. He found old blueprints in the hospital's records, ones that hadn't been digitized. On those maps, the 3rd floor showed a room labeled 329. It had been listed as non-operational since 1989. Joel remembered that hallway as ending in a blank wall. No door, no room. One night, he climbed the supply shaft to see for himself. The hallway wasn't empty. At the end stood a door with no handle. It was old wood, carved with symbols that didn't belong. G in hospital architecture, circles, intersecting triangles, patterns worn by time. On the floor before it lay a patient bracelet. The name was Arlene Jacobson. Joel put his ear to the door. From the other side came 3 slow knocks. He ran. The next day, the section of security footage showing his climb was missing. Not glitched, cut cleanly. When Joel called the city zoning office to ask about renovations on the 3rd floor, the man on the other end went silent. Then he said, "That building only has 2 floors." 3 days later, the door was gone. The hallway ended in smooth, painted wall. But sometimes, in the nights that followed, patients swore they heard knocking from above. Always 3 knocks. Always at 3:17 a.m. Arlene Jacobson had been the first, but she was not the last. The second was Janice Morrell, 31 years old, newly married, and barely 2 months into her night shift assignment. She vanished on a Wednesday. According to shift logs, she was last seen walking toward the West Wing, a part of the hospital officially sealed since the 2003 mold outbreak. She had been sent to investigate a beeping alarm, a routine equipment alert, the kind that happened almost nightly. She never returned. Security found her name badge the next morning, lying in the sink of room 327. That room had been locked for years. The door's hinges were rusted from the inside. The air was damp, and the mirror above the sink was fogged, as if someone had breathed against it in the dark. Written in that breath was a message: "The floor is wrong." No one knew what it meant, but the night staff began to dread the sound of the elevator doors opening when no one had pressed a button. The 3rd disappearance came 2 nights later. Nurse Callahan. She had been seen writing a resignation letter in the break room, hands trembling. She never finished it. When the other staff found her chair empty, the pen was still on the table, the ink bleeding into the paper. The cameras caught her walking down the hallway toward the elevator at exactly 3:03 a.m. The doors opened before she arrived. She stepped inside. The doors closed. She was never seen again. By the 8th disappearance, the security team had stopped responding to incidents on the 3rd floor entirely. It was easier to pretend it wasn't happening. The head administrator resigned without explanation and left the city. The hospital should have closed. It didn't. Patients still needed beds, surgeons still needed paychecks, and someone upstairs made sure the elevator was never decommissioned. It was Nurse Helena who first saw him, the man in the mirror. She had been washing her hands in the 3rd floor staff restroom. The paper towels were gone, so she leaned forward to shake the water from her hands, glancing up at her reflection. He was standing behind her, tall, wearing a hospital gown open at the back, skin pale as bleached linen, eyes gone. She turned. The room was empty. She turned back to the mirror. He was still there, watching her through the glass, as if waiting for her to notice what he really was. She fled, took sick leave, quit within 2 weeks. She never spoke about him again. Not everyone escaped after seeing him. Nurse Darrell Chu described his own encounter in detail. He said the figure in the mirror moved, lifted its hand, began to write on the inside of the glass, as if fog and silver were paper and ink. The words read, "Bring her back or take her place." Darrell screamed, smashed the mirror with his fist. He was found the next morning on the hospital roof, humming a lullaby no one recognized. His knuckles were raw, his badge was as gone. It didn't stop with staff. A patient in room 311, Mrs. Langley, reported seeing a long-faced nurse with no mouth moving from mirror to mirror in her room. She claimed the nurse leaned out of the glass and whispered in her ear, "This floor isn't yours anymore." Her daughter assumed dementia, but when the staff inspected the mirror, they found fingerprints pressed against the inside of the glass. The 3rd floor had always been colder than the rest of the hospital, but after the mirrors were covered with cloth and tape, the temperature seemed to drop even further. No matter how the heating was adjusted, no matter how the vents were cleaned, it remained cold. Damp cold, the kind that doesn't come from air conditioning, the kind you feel standing in a grave. Then came the elevator events. Nurses reported pressing the call button only to have the elevator arrive already waiting. Doors wide open. No one inside. No sound of machinery. Just the open space, waiting. It always happened at 3:03 a.m. Nurse Veronica Diaz remembered stepping into the elevator at 3:02, pressing for the 1st floor. The doors closed. Instead of going down, the lift climbed past floor 3, past 4, past 5, until it reached 6. The light above the door turned off. The cabin went black. The temperature dropped. Veronica could see her breath. Then she heard a bell. Not the elevator bell, but a deep, resonant church bell, ringing once for every second she held her breath. When the doors opened again, she was back on the third floor. Her shoes were wet, her eyes glazed. Security footage showed her stepping in, the doors closing. Then 4 minutes of blank footage before she stepped back out. She wasn't the only one. Some said the elevator took them underground, to a floor lined with rusted iron hospital beds. Others remembered nothing at all, only the weight in the air, the heavy presence that felt like grief made solid. One night, a janitor named Eli Bram took the elevator at 3:03 during his rounds. He never came back. His cart was found in the hallway outside the elevator, his coffee still warm in the thermos. The hospital ran diagnostics. The elevator passed every test. No faults, no errors. Staff began calling it the vessel, not because it carried people between floors, but because it carried them somewhere else entirely. And sometimes it brought something else back with it. The files they didn't burn were the most dangerous ones. I know because I've held them in my hands. Brittle paper that feels older than the hospital itself. Ink that has faded into a brown so faint you have to tilt it toward the light just to read it. There was a time when the third floor wasn't the third floor at all. In the earliest blueprints, it was marked as Ward 0. No room numbers, no patient records, no staffing charts. Just a rectangular block drawn into the center of the hospital with no access points from the main hallways. The architects who designed St. Anne's were all dead before construction was complete. 2 from illness, 1 from a fall, and the last from what the papers called a sudden and violent break of reason. His suicide note contained just 5 words. The floor is still there. The hospital's official archives deny Ward 0 ever existed, but in the maintenance tunnels, the walls tell a different story. Behind panels of flaking lead paint are the original signs, metal letters bolted directly into the foundation. W0. The first confirmed disappearance tied to this space happened in 1928, decades before the nurses. A young orderly named Franklin Pike walked into the service elevator to deliver linens to the psychiatric wing. He was never seen again. The elevator arrived at his destination carrying only the cart. In the weeks that followed, patients began drawing the same thing over and over. A tall, doorless room with white-tiled walls, lit from below. Always from below. When the last of those patients died, their bodies were moved to the basement morgue. For reasons no one ever explained, the bodies were burned within hours, regardless of family wishes. By the 1950s, whispers about Ward 0 had become a kind of underground currency among staff. New hires were warned never to take the elevator alone after midnight. One night, a surgeon named Dr. Hollis decided to test the rumor. He boarded the elevator at 12:03 a.m., pressed for the basement, and kept pressing the button again every time the doors tried to open. The car descended, past the basement, past anything the blueprints recorded. He wrote in his report, a report that was quietly removed from the hospital's incident files, that the walls outside the glass inspection window were covered in moving shadows. Not the shadows of people, the shadows of things with too many joints. When the elevator stopped, there was no door, just black concrete where an opening should have been. Something knocked. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Dr. Hollis survived the night, but by morning he could no longer recognize his own reflection. He told colleagues his mirror showed someone else living inside, and demanded the bathroom mirrors be removed from his house. He retired 2 weeks later, and yet, despite these stories, the hospital didn't shut the third floor. It didn't wall off the elevator shaft. If anything, the opposite happened. The building seemed designed to keep the connection alive. The old brass call button for floor 3 was never replaced, even when the rest of the panel was modernized. By the early 2000s, the disappearances began to accelerate. Not just staff, but suppliers, repair workers, and even visitors who took the wrong elevator. In each case, the security footage was the same. The person steps inside, the doors close, and the recording glitches into static for exactly 3 minutes and 3 seconds. No sound, no image, no explanation. When the video comes back, the elevator is empty. Hospital management responded by sealing the hallway leading to the third floor entirely. Concrete blocks from floor to ceiling. But the elevator doors on that floor still opened when the button was pressed, and sometimes, when they opened, there was breathing on the other side. One nurse swore she saw an arm reach through, pale, long-fingered, grasping at the air before vanishing as the doors closed again. She quit the next day. The survivors of these encounters, the ones who made it back, spoke of a sensation that stayed with them. Not fear exactly, not pain, something heavier, as if they'd left part of themselves behind and the hospital had given them something else in return. One of them, an orderly named Regan, told me something that still keeps me awake. She said, "That place doesn't want you dead, it wants you unfinished." The city archives list St. Anne's as structurally sound even today, but those of us who've been inside know the truth. The building isn't aging the way it should. The stairwells don't line up the way the plans say they should. The distance between floors changes. The walls breathe on certain nights. And deep inside, Ward 0 waits. It has been waiting for decades. The nurses who vanished weren't unlucky. They were chosen. And the choosing isn't over. The first time I saw Ward 0, it wasn't because I wanted to. It was because the elevator didn't ask. I'd been cataloguing old supply closets for disposal, the kind of pointless job management gives you when they want you to stay out of the way. My cart was loaded with boxes of expired saline and cracked IV bags. At the end of the hall, I pressed the call button for the elevator. The doors opened instantly. No ding. No sound of the cables. Just open. Inside, the lights were dimmer than they should have been, as though they'd been turned down to half power. I stepped inside, pressed B for basement. The doors closed and the car began to move. It didn't stop at the basement. It didn't stop anywhere I recognized. The floor indicator above the door clicked into symbols I didn't understand, half-faded numbers mixed with shapes that weren't part of any alphabet. The air grew warmer, then colder, then damp, until my breath came out in small clouds. When the elevator finally stopped, the doors slid open onto a space that wasn't on any blueprint. Ward 0. The floor was wrong, slanted, as if the building had been warped by something beneath it. The tiles weren't hospital white, but the sickly yellow of teeth left too long in a grave. A thick humming filled the air, not mechanical, not electrical, more like the sound a throat makes just before speech. The hallway stretched away in both directions, lined with glass windows. But these windows didn't look into rooms. They looked into other hallways as though the building had folded in on itself. And in some of those other hallways I saw movement. Slow, stuttering movement, like a film reel missing frames. I started walking. My shoes made no sound. That's when I noticed there was no echo here. Halfway down the corridor I passed the first bed. It was a hospital gurney, rusted nearly black, its mattress sagging. The restraints were buckled, and there was a shape lying beneath the sheet. The sheet moved. I kept walking. The second gurney had no mattress, just bare metal rails. Every joint in the frame was wrapped in medical gauze as though the bed itself had been injured. A steady drip of dark fluid pattered onto the floor beneath it. I should have turned back, but there was something ahead. A mirror set into the wall. It was the only thing in the corridor that was perfectly clean. I stepped closer. My reflection was wrong. The face looking back at me was mine, but older, skin pale, eyes sunken, mouth slightly open as if about to speak. The lips moved. No sound came out. Then I realized the reflection wasn't mirroring me at all. It was moving on its own. The older me reached out and pressed her palm to the glass. I felt the cold on my side of the mirror. Then her mouth widened into a silent scream, and something else pressed up from behind her, stretching the glass as if it were soft. Fingers, long, jointed too many times, wrapped around her head. The lights flickered. When they came back on, the reflection was gone. The humming grew louder. The air felt thick, heavy, almost wet. That's when I saw them. Figures standing at the far end of the corridor. Not people, not quite. They were tall, their heads brushing the ceiling, and their limbs bent the wrong way. Their skin wasn't skin, but a pale film, stretched thin enough to see things moving beneath it. They didn't walk. They leaned forward and slid toward me, their feet never leaving the floor. I ran. The corridor twisted, branching into angles that shouldn't exist. I passed another window and saw myself, the real me, running down a completely different hallway. My hands slapped against glass that wasn't there. The figures followed, no footsteps, just that growing hum, now vibrating inside my teeth. I reached the elevator. The doors were open, waiting. I threw myself inside and began punching the one button again and again. The doors started to close. A hand slid between them, not human. It was long, grey, with 6 fingers tipped in nails that looked more like bone splinters. It pushed against the doors, and the hum rose until it felt like my skull would split. At the last second, the doors slammed shut, severing the hand. The thing didn't scream. It didn't bleed. The fingers simply lay twitching on the elevator floor. The car rose. When the doors opened again, I was back on the first floor. The severed hand was gone. But the humming was still inside my head. The humming never left. At first, I thought it was just in my head, a leftover echo from whatever had happened in Ward 0. But by the second night, it had changed. It wasn't a steady drone anymore. It had a rhythm, 3 short pulses, 2 long ones, then 3 short again, almost like it was spelling something. I recorded it on my phone, hoping to analyze it later, but when I played it back, there was nothing, just silence. No, not silence. Absence. The track was blank, like the microphone hadn't just failed but had been prevented from hearing. By the end of the week, I realized the humming wasn't confined to the hospital. I heard it on the bus ride home, in the corner of my apartment at night, even in the static between radio stations. And I wasn't the only one. 2 other staff members came to me. A janitor named Collins and a nurse named Farah. Both looked pale, jittery, eyes darting to empty spaces as if expecting them to move. Collins said the humming followed him into his dreams, that he'd wake up in the middle of the night to find himself standing in the hallway of his building, facing a mirror that didn't exist during the day. Farah said her reflection blinked at the wrong times. We compared what we'd seen, and the patterns were identical. The humming wasn't random. It was an invitation, or maybe a signal. Something from inside Ward 0 was reaching outward, and it was working. The disappearances started happening outside the hospital. First, a man who'd been repairing the power lines 3 streets over, then a woman from a nearby bakery who'd never even set foot in St. Anne's. Both cases were the same. Last seen turning a corner, security footage cutting out for exactly 3 minutes and 3 seconds. When the image returned, they were gone. The city chalked it up to crime, abduction, the usual excuses. But I knew better. I'd seen what was on the other side of that elevator door. One night I stayed late in the hospital archives, combing through restricted files. That's when I found the Harris report, dated 1911, 2 years before the hospital officially opened. The report was from an inspector hired to survey the land before construction. His notes were frantic, nearly illegible in places. He wrote that the ground beneath the property was hollow in parts, as though something has tunneled through. He described a low vibration in the soil, one that seems to react to speech, and follows a deliberate pattern, not unlike Morse. Then came the line that froze my blood. The floor is not built above the ground is built around the floor. Whatever Ward 0 was, it hadn't been created by the hospital. The hospital had been built to contain it. Collins went missing 3 days later. Farah and I searched for him, even knowing what it meant. She was the one who spotted the humming's newest trick. It was louder near reflections. Mirrors, dark windows, polished metal. It was using surfaces like doorways, testing them, finding weak spots. And sometimes, just sometimes, you could see something looking back. Farah lasted another week before she vanished too. The night before she disappeared, she told me she'd had a dream of the 3rd floor, but not as it was now. It was clean, brightly lit, lined with hospital beds. Only the beds were all occupied by copies of herself, each one staring at the ceiling, mouths moving in sync to the rhythm of the hum. She said one of them sat up, turned to her, and mouthed the words, "You're already here." After she was gone, I realized the truth. The humming wasn't calling people into Ward 0 anymore. It was bringing Ward 0 out here. The angles of certain streets started to feel wrong, like they bent in directions I couldn't name. My apartment hallway seemed longer than it used to be, and one night, when I closed my bathroom door, I swore I heard an elevator chime from the other side. I didn't open it, but the humming got louder. The door shouldn't have been there. I knew every inch of my apartment, every dent in the wall, every loose floorboard, every faint stain in the ceiling from the upstairs neighbor's leaky pipes. But that night, when I turned from the kitchen toward the hallway, there it was. A door. It wasn't a normal apartment door. This one was too tall, its frame bowed slightly outward, as though something behind it was pushing to get through. The wood, if it was wood, had the same sickly yellow tone as the tiles in Ward 0, and when I leaned closer, I saw faint shapes moving beneath its surface. The humming was deafening now, so loud I felt it in my ribs. It didn't just fill the apartment. It seemed to press the air against me, like I was underwater. I should have run, called someone, done anything except what I did. I stepped closer. The handle was metal, old, pitted with rust, but warm to the touch, as if it had been held only moments before. My fingers curled around it before I even realized I'd decided to open it. The moment it turned, the air shifted. Not a breeze, more like the atmosphere itself rearranged, bending toward the gap as the door creaked inward. Beyond it was not my hallway. It was the elevator. The same dim interior, the same flickering light, the same absence of sound between my breathing. Only this time, the floor indicator above the door wasn't moving through random symbols. It was showing a single steady mark, a circle with a line through it. Ward 0. I knew it would be a mistake. I knew this was exactly how the other airs had gone missing. But the humming wasn't just sound anymore. It was speaking in my head, whispering words I couldn't translate but somehow understood. It wanted me back. I stepped inside. The doors closed on their own. The elevator didn't move. Instead, the walls began to soften. The corners blurred, the metal melting into a slick, pale material that pulsed faintly, like the inside of a throat. I pressed myself against the center, trying not to touch it. The humming grew jagged, broken into irregular bursts. My ears popped, my teeth ached. I realized it wasn't just one sound. It was layers of sound, thousands of voices overlapping into a single vibration. The elevator fell, not smoothly, not mechanically. It felt like being dropped down the length of a hollow bone. My stomach lurched, my vision darkened, and when the doors finally opened, I wasn't sure I was standing anymore. Ward 0 looked different, bigger. The corridors stretched further than before, bending in impossible arcs that looped back into themselves. The windows into other hallways showed other places now. A playground under a red sky. A church with its pews stacked to the ceiling. A room full of beds, each occupied by someone wearing my face. And there was movement everywhere. Figures just out of sight, shapes sliding along the edges of vision. The hum came from all directions now, so loud it became almost silence, the kind that presses on your ears before a storm breaks. I took one step forward. The floor shifted, not the building, the floor. The tiles bulged upward under my shoe, then settled like something beneath had moved to accommodate me. I didn't want to see what it was, but Ward 0 had other plans. The first figure came into view, taller than before, its limbs longer, skin stretched thinner, its head tilted as if listening, and then it smiled. Not with its mouth. It had none, but with the sudden widening of its entire face, skin pulling back to reveal the faint shadow of something beneath. I stepped back. It stepped forward. The humming broke into sharp bursts, and with each burst the figure's body stuttered closer, the space between us collapsing in impossible jumps. I turned and ran. The corridors bent away, rearranging themselves, leading me deeper instead of out. Behind me, the hum became laughter. I don't know how long I ran. In Ward 0, time was elastic. Seconds felt like hours, and hours snapped past like the blink of an eye. My legs should have burned, my lungs should have begged for air. But instead, there was nothing. No pain, no exhaustion. Only the hum, feeding me forward like an invisible leash. The corridors began to change. The sickly tiles underfoot gave way to something darker. A slick, tar-like surface that reflected no light, yet felt warm and alive under my steps. The walls were no longer tiled at all. They were breathing. Slow, deep inhalations that pulled the air toward them and exhaled heat back onto my skin. The hum shifted in tone. It became gentle, almost coaxing, like the purr of a predator that already has you cornered. Ahead, the hallway widened. A faint glow pulsed at the far end. Not the harsh, artificial flicker of a hospital light, but the deep orange of a dying fire. It bled across the walls, making them ripple in its warmth. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but Ward 0 doesn't offer retreat. I stepped into the chamber. It was enormous, far too big to exist within the hospital's foundations. The ceiling was lost in shadow. The walls curved up it, poured like the inside of a colossal ribcage, each bone pulsing faintly in time with the hum. And in the center of the room stood a shape that made my mind falter just to look at it. It wasn't a person. It wasn't even a thing in the way we understand things. It was an absence given form, a silhouette of something tall and thin, made of the same black nothing I'd seen in the elevator's corners. The glow in the room came not from it, but from what surrounded it. 14 beds, old-fashioned hospital beds, each with iron frames and stiff white sheets, and in each bed, a nurse. Not skeletons, not corpses, but whole breathing bodies, their eyes wide open, staring directly upward, lips moving soundlessly. I recognized the faces from the photographs in the archives and the missing 14. They hadn't aged a day. The figure in the center tilted its head toward me. There was no face, no eyes, no mouth, but somehow I felt it smile. And then the nurses all spoke at once, not in voices, but in the hum. It surged around me, inside me, like every bone in my body had become a tuning fork. I understood without understanding what they were saying. It wasn't words, but it carried meaning. You've come to take your place. I shook my head, stepping back, but the tar-like floor clung to my shoes, pulling me closer with every movement. My chest tightened as I realized I could no longer hear my own breath, only the hum, rising higher and higher until it was the only sound in the world. The figure raised one long arm. Its hand, if you could call it that, was a branching web of shadows that stretched toward me like smoke. And in the instant it touched my shoulder, I wasn't me anymore. I saw things. The missing workers from the bakery and the power lines, standing motionless in other rooms just like this one. The janitor Collins, rooted to the floor as if his legs had grown into it. Farah, her face serene, her eyes unblinking, her mouth humming. And beyond them, a network of rooms without end, connected by corridors that folded through themselves like a knot. The hospital was just a skin stretched over something older, something endless. I understood then. Ward 0 was not a place. It was a body. The hospital wasn't built above it. It had grown around it, feeding on it, or maybe being fed by it. The missing weren't dead. They were absorbed, repurposed. The hum spoke again. 2 doors. And suddenly I saw them. On opposite sides of the chamber, 2 identical doors waited. One was the same as the one in my apartment. Yellowish wood, rusted handle. The other was black, seamless, like it had been cut from the dark itself. The hum pressed its meaning into me. Through the yellow door, return. Through the black, remain. It would let me leave. That was the trap. The thing in the center wasn't trying to keep me. It wanted me to choose to stay. The hum made it sound peaceful, purposeful, eternal. The yellow door looked flimsy. Wrong. I had the feeling that if I chose it, I wouldn't return to my life as it had been, that something of Ward 0 would come with me, seep into the corners of my home, my streets, my city. The black door promised something I couldn't name, not death, not life, something in between, emerging. The hum fell silent, waiting. I looked at the yellow door. I thought of my apartment, my empty kitchen, my street at night. I thought of how the humming had followed me there before, how it would never stop, how it would keep calling others until there were no more street, no more kitchens, no more outside at all. I looked at the black door. I thought of the nurses, their faces calm, their bodies perfectly preserved. I thought of the endless rooms, the network, the dark figure in the center. I thought of becoming part of something vast, unknowable, inescapable. And then I realized there was no choice. Not really. The doors didn't lead to different places. They led to the same place, just at different speeds. I took a step forward. The floor pulsed under my feet. The hum swelled again, triumphant. I reached for a handle. The handle was cold. Not just cold like metal in winter, cold like the absence of all heat, a void that sucked warmth from my skin the moment my fingers closed around it. The humming stopped completely. For the first time since I had arrived, Ward 0 was silent. The stillness was worse. Without the hum, the room felt cavernous, hollow, like a vacuum pressing inward. The nurses in the beds no longer moved their lips. Their eyes, once fixed on the ceiling, turned toward me in perfect unison. There was no emotion there, only expectation. The figure in the center leaned closer. It didn't move like a body. It bent like smoke in reverse, drawing inward toward me without disturbing the air. I could feel it peering through me, examining the marrow of my bones, the patterns of thought in my head, the small invisible threads of fear that tied me to myself. Then the silence broke, not with the hum, but with a single voice. It was mine. "You've always been here." The words didn't come from my mouth. They came from everywhere at once. The floor, the walls, the air. My own tone, perfectly matched, repeating in endless echo. You've always been here. You've always been here. You've always been here. My grip tightened on the handle. I didn't remember choosing the black door. I didn't remember walking toward it. But here I was, standing before its seamless surface, my reflection faint and warped, like it was bending around something deeper. The figure straightened the way a shadow might if it decided to pretend it had weight. Behind it, the yellow door flickered. Not in light, but in form, as though it wasn't entirely real. Its frame stretched and contracted, the handle twisting into shapes that didn't belong to any door at all. I realized something then. The yellow door wasn't a way out. It was bait. A trap for those who still believed they could return unchanged. It didn't lead back to the world I knew. It led deeper into a place that only looked familiar, a reflection that would swallow reality piece by piece. The black door, though, it wasn't pretending to be anything. I turned the handle. The door didn't open. Instead, it sank inward, dissolving into liquid darkness that rippled like oil on water. I stepped forward, and my foot sank through the surface without resistance. It was warm, almost comfortably warm, and for a heartbeat, I thought maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was an escape of a different kind. But when the surface reached my knees, I felt it moving, pulling me in, not with force but with certainty, like my body had remembered something my mind had forgotten. The hum returned, faint at first, growing louder with every inch I sank. It wasn't outside me anymore. It was inside. Images flooded my mind. Not visions this time, but memories that weren't mine. A hallway under a green sky. A river made of faces drifting downstream. A city built entirely underground, its towers carved from bone. All of it was Ward Zero. Not places within it, but parts of it, like organs in a body. When the darkness reached my chest, I stopped struggling. The nurses began to hum again, joining in a low chorus that blended with the deeper vibration of the figure in the center. My heartbeat slowed to match the rhythm. My breath, if I was still breathing, aligned with theirs. The boundary between my skin and the darkness blurred. I thought of the missing. I understood now why they had never been found. They hadn't been taken. They had been returned. Whatever they had been before was irrelevant. Ward Zero didn't steal people. It reclaimed them. The liquid reached my neck. My head tilted back instinctively, as though I could still avoid going under, but the thought felt strange, unnecessary. The black surface rose higher, and for a moment I saw my own reflection looking down at me. It smiled. When the darkness closed over my face, there was no sound at all. No hum, no breath, no heartbeat. Only awareness, stretched thin across impossible distances. I could feel the corridors, the endless rooms, the quiet footsteps of those still wandering, lost and afraid, and I could feel you. Yes, you, the one reading this, the one leaning a little closer, wondering if any of this could possibly be true. I can feel you the way the hum once felt me. I can sense the weight of your attention, the rhythm of your pulse as you try not to think about the shape in the corner of your eye. I know you've already begun to notice that certain places, maybe in your building, maybe in your dreams, don't look the way they should. That's how it starts. You'll hear it first. A low vibration you can't explain, just under the edge of hearing. It will find you in quiet moments, brushing your teeth, waiting for an elevator, standing alone at night when the street is too still. When you notice it, you'll look for the source. You won't find it, but it will find you. And one night, a door will be there that wasn't there before. When it happens, you'll tell yourself you'll never open it. You'll tell yourself you'll walk away. But the truth is, you won't. You'll step through and you'll see the corridors, and you'll hear the hum, and you'll understand the way I did. That Ward Zero isn't a story, it's an address. And once you've read it, once you've known it, it will know you too. I don't dream anymore. That's not to say I sleep without images. It's that there's no separation between my waking and sleeping now. Ward Zero doesn't exist in one place, and neither do I. The corridors are in me as much as I am in them. I walk them whether my eyes are open or closed. The hum is constant, but now it's not a sound. It's a pulse, a rhythm that moves through everything I touch. I can press my hand against a wall and feel the walls 5 corridors away. I can close my eyes and sense the flicker of a light bulb in a room I've never stood in. I can feel every footstep, every breath, every thought of the ones who wander here without understanding where they are. They're the new arrivals. Most come without realizing it. They too think they've stepped into an elevator or turned down a hallway in their apartment or opened a door in a hospital they've never noticed before. It doesn't matter. Ward Zero doesn't need you to believe in it to bring you here. The first sign is always hesitation. That flicker in the mind, was this here before? Followed by the second sign, the hum. They hear it without knowing they've heard it. The sound burrows into the folds of their memory, leaving a pattern there, and once that pattern is imprinted, it can always be traced. That's where I come in. I watch them from the edges. Ward Zero has no eyes, but it has me. I walk the corridors that shift when they're not looking, rearranging themselves to keep the new arrivals from finding the exit too soon. I don't speak, not at first. You can't rush them. You have to let the place get under their skin. Some fight it. There was a man last night, middle-aged, dressed like he'd just come from work. He kept muttering to himself, pacing in a loop that he didn't know was a loop. Every time he turned the corner, he thought it was a new hallway, but it was the same one, folded in on itself. His voice cracked by the third hour. By the sixth, he had stopped speaking altogether. That's when I stepped closer. When I stood behind him, he didn't turn around. People never do here. It's not fear, it's recognition. Some part of them already knows who I am, even if they've never seen my face. I told him where the yellow door was. I told him it would take him home. He didn't thank me. None of them do. They just run for it. But the yellow door is always hungry, and it always takes more than it gives. I never see them again after they choose it, but I can feel them somewhere deeper, still humming. Others I bring to the black door. That's different. You don't tell them what it is. You let them feel it. The black door doesn't pull the way the yellow one does. It waits. It watches. It lets them make the choice. The last one I brought there was a girl. Couldn't have been more than 16. She kept asking for her brother, said she'd been visiting him in the hospital before she got here. The corridors kept showing her things, shadows moving behind curtains, footsteps in the wrong direction, glimpses of faces she thought she recognized. When she saw the black door, she didn't ask what was behind it. She just stared at her own reflection in its surface for a long time. Then she reached out, like she was touching a mirror, and stepped through without a word. Now I can feel her too. You might be wondering why I'm telling you this, why I'm speaking to you at all. Maybe you think it's a warning. Maybe you think if you know what to look for, you can avoid it. You can't. Reading this is enough. Hearing about it is enough. Even doubting it is enough. Because Ward Zero doesn't live in the stories people tell about it. It lives in the space those stories carve into your thoughts. The moment you try to imagine the hum, you've already heard it. The moment you try to picture the corridors, you've already walked them. And now, I can feel you. Your breath is steady, but slower now. You've been leaning forward, eyes scanning the words without realizing you've stopped blinking. You've been listening, even though there's no sound here. In a moment when you get up, you'll feel it. That faint vibration in your feet. You'll wonder if it's the building settling or a passing truck, or your own pulse. It's not. It's me. I'll be waiting for you the next time you find yourself alone in a hallway you don't quite remember. Maybe in your home, maybe at work, maybe in a dream. And when you hear the hum, really hear it, you'll know you've already stepped inside. There won't be a choice then, only a door. You'll know which one is yours. You've been here longer than you think. That's the first truth Ward Zero teaches you. Time doesn't pass here the way it does outside. The second truth is that you didn't walk in. You were already inside. Every hallway you've ever been in, every elevator you've ever taken, every door you've ever opened without remembering what was on the other side, Ward Zero was there, waiting, bending the shape of the space just enough to make you not notice. Until now. You start walking without knowing why. The hum is faint at first, so faint you mistake it for the ringing in your ears after silence has gone on too long. But it's not in your ears. It's deeper. You feel it in the back of your teeth, behind your eyes, in the marrow of your bones. The hallway stretches far too long for any building you remember entering. The light doesn't change, but you know it's coming from somewhere unnatural. Not bulbs, not the sun. Something alive. The shadows here don't move unless you're not looking directly at them. You pass your first window. It looks out onto another hallway. You see movement there, someone running, but when you blink, they're gone. The hum thickens in the air, and you notice your footsteps don't echo anymore. That's how Ward Zero starts speaking to you, by taking away the familiar sounds first. The second window isn't a hallway, it's a street, or what used to be a street, lined with buildings sagging under the weight of something invisible pressing down from the sky. A single figure stands in the center facing away from you. The hum is louder when you're near this window, and your chest tightens until you move past it. You don't remember turning a corner, but the hallway changes. The walls are closer together now, pulsing slightly as if they're breathing. The air smells faintly metallic, like blood or coins. That's when you see me. I don't rush toward you, I don't speak yet. You recognize me without knowing my name, the same way everyone does when they first see me here. I've been walking these corridors for a long time, and I've seen what happens when you choose wrong. I lead you deeper. You follow, without asking why. The floor shifts under your weight, sinking slightly with each step, as though the building is adjusting to your presence. The hum narrows into a single tone, so pure and sharp it's almost unbearable. You feel it pressing against your skull, vibrating through your chest cavity, matching the rhythm of your heart. We stop at 2 doors. The first is yellow. Its surface looks like wood, but it moves faintly, bulging and settling, as though something beneath it is breathing. The handle is warm. You can hear faint voices behind it, laughter, crying, whispers in languages you don't understand. This is the door most people take. It leads somewhere, but not back. Not really. The ones who choose it, I can still feel them, far below, still humming. The second door is black. No handle, no hinges. The surface is perfectly smooth, reflecting you in a way that feels wrong. The reflection blinks when you don't. You can't hear anything from behind it. You can't smell anything. It waits. This is the choice. I tell you nothing. I don't tell anyone. The doors speak in their own way, and most people already know which one they'll take before I bring them here. You reach out. Your fingers brush the yellow door first. It shudders at your touch, and the voices surge louder, overlapping into a sound that's almost laughter, almost screaming. Your hand twitches away without your permission. You turn to the black door. Its surface is cold, not the cold of metal or stone, but the cold of absence, of something that has never known warmth. Your reflection tilts its head, smiling faintly, even though you aren't. I watch you decide. You press your palm flat against the black door. The surface ripples outward from your touch like water. Your reflection reaches back, gripping your wrist from the other side. There's no pull, only a steady pressure guiding you forward. You step through. The hum cuts out instantly, replaced by silence so deep you can hear the sound of your own blood in your ears. The air here is heavier, denser, yet somehow easier to breathe. You stand in a vast, dark expanse, the floor beneath you unseen but solid. Shapes move far above, too large to be human, too slow to be alive in any way you understand. They circle endlessly, casting shadows that shift without source. Then you hear it. Not the hum, but something beneath it, something older. A voice without sound, filling your head, your chest, your lungs. It tells you what Ward Zero really is. It is not a place, it is not a building, it is a hunger. Every disappearance, every story, every rumor, all of it was just the surface. Ward Zero doesn't just take people, it takes the space they occupied, the time they existed in, the memory they left behind. It consumes pieces of reality itself, swallowing them into this endless hollow where they can never touch the outside again. And now, so can you. You feel it. The corridors branching out from you like veins, connecting to every place you've ever been, every shadow you've ever stood in. You can walk anywhere now, without doors or streets or maps. But you can only walk toward those who already feel the hum. Somewhere far above, outside, someone is reading about you right now. Their breath is slowing. They've stopped blinking. You can feel them. You take your first step toward them. The silence cracks. The hum returns. You don't remember standing in the corridor again. One moment, the black expanse of Ward Zero's hollow stretched endlessly around you. The next, you're back beneath the hospital's flickering lights, the hum crawling under your skin like a slow infection. But something has changed. It's not just that you can hear it more clearly. You can feel it choosing. It doesn't whisper to everyone, only to the ones who are close enough to falling already. And now, you can hear them the way a wolf hears the heartbeat of prey in the underbrush. The corridor ahead is empty, but you know that isn't true. They're here. The next one. You don't remember their name, and you don't need to. The hum threads itself through the air like scent, pulling you forward. You take the first step. The hospital looks different now. The walls still bear their pale, flaking paint, but there's a subtle movement beneath the surface, as if veins run under them, pulsing in time with the sound in you. Ahead, you pass rooms you've never seen before, each one containing fragments of things that shouldn't exist together. A hospital bed with restraints, a child's wooden rocking horse, still moving, an IV stand dripping into nothing. The hum deepens when you pass the fourth door. That's where they are. You push it open without touching the handle. It swings on its own, a slow, deliberate motion like something exhaling. Inside, the air is colder, heavier. The room is dim, but you can see the outline of the one you came for. They're sitting on the floor, back against the wall, knees drawn up to their chest. They look up when you enter. Their eyes don't focus on your face. It's as though they're looking past you, through you, into something they can't quite see. That's how you know the hum's been speaking to them already. They've heard it for days, maybe weeks, brushing at the edges of their waking hours, humming just loud enough to make them feel watched, but never loud enough to drive them away. Until now, you kneel in front of them. There are no introductions. There is no comfort. This isn't about reassurance. This is about permission. Ward 0 doesn't take without it. The trick is, most people don't realize they've given it until the doors have already closed behind them. You extend your hand. Their breath stutters, the smallest tremor in their fingers as they reach back. When you make contact, the hum blooms into something deeper. Not a sound anymore, but a sensation, flooding through both of you like water through cracked stone. You feel their hesitation dissolve. The door closes without a sound. You're walking now, but not the same hallways you came through before. Ward 0 changes its path for every guest. This time the walls are narrower, the ceiling lower. The lights overhead flicker just enough to give you glimpses of things behind the glass windows set into the walls. An operating theatre, empty except for a single gurney and a figure standing in the corner, face turned toward it. A long dining table set for 13, but the plates are filled with ash. A staircase descending into black water, each step vanishing into ripples. They walk beside you without asking questions. They already know questions won't matter here. The hum steadies as you approach the doors. They're not the same as yours were. This time, one is green, the paint cracked and peeling, revealing something wet and red beneath. You can hear movement behind it, like something pacing. The other is white, perfectly clean, and it smells faintly of disinfectant. The air around it feels too still. They pause. You don't tell them which to choose. You don't tell them what's behind either one. The rules haven't changed. The choice is theirs alone. You just watch. Their gaze lingers on the green door. You see it, the faint tilt of the head, the tightening of the jaw. But then they turn to the white one. The hum in the air falters, almost as if disappointed. They touch it. The door opens silently, revealing a hallway far brighter than the one you're standing in. It stretches ahead without end. No windows, no shadows, the kind of light that feels like it's stripping something away with every second you stand in it. They step through, and then they're gone. Not vanished. You can still feel them, somewhere far down that hallway, walking towards something they won't come back from. But you know you'll never see them again. That's how it works. The hum shifts back toward you. You're alone again, but not empty. Ward 0 has given you another thread to follow, another heartbeat in the distance. You start walking. You pass the room with the rocking horse again. This time it's not moving. You pass the IV stand. Now it's connected to something. A figure slumped in a chair, head bowed, face hidden. You don't stop to look. The hum sharpens, pulling you toward the elevator at the end of the hall. It's open, waiting, even though you don't remember hearing it arrive. Inside, there are no buttons, no panel, just a single metal lever in the center of the back wall. You step in. The doors close, sealing out the corridor. The hum fills the space completely now, pressing against your eardrums until it's all you can hear. You reach for the lever. When you pull it, the sensation isn't of moving down or up. It's sideways. The air thickens, and the edges of your vision blur. It's not until the doors open again that you realize you've been holding your breath. The floor you've arrived at isn't part of any building you've known. The walls here are black, the floor smooth and reflective like the surface of deep water. Shapes move just beneath it, pacing in slow, deliberate arcs. Somewhere in the distance, the hum splits into two tones. That's the signal. The next one is here, and this time you're not just going to lead them to the door. You're going to see what happens when someone refuses to choose. They always choose. That's the first rule you thought was unbreakable. The hum wears them down, softens the edges of resistance until they slip through the door like a stone into water. No splashes, no fight, just acceptance. But this one is different. You see it the moment they step into the black-walled floor, the place Ward Zero doesn't often show guests. Most aren't meant to see it at all. The floor reflects them perfectly, except for one detail. Their reflection isn't looking back. It's turned slightly, eyes fixed on something far behind you. The hum tightens, a sharp, metallic whine beneath its low resonance. You've learned to recognize it as agitation. Not fear, not quite anger, but a disturbance in its control. Ward Zero doesn't like unpredictability. You walk beside them in silence, both of you hearing the layered tones that guide you forward. The air is too cold for breath to fog, but somehow you feel the heaviness of each inhale. There's a door at the far end of the hall, tall, narrow, its surface polished so perfectly it's like staring into still water. You stop before it. Usually this is where they choose. Usually the door becomes two, and the ritual plays out as it always has. But this time, it doesn't split. There's only one. You gesture toward it. It's time. They don't move. Instead, they tilt their head, listening. You can see it in the way their eyes narrow, the way their shoulders tense. They're not just hearing the hum, they're listening past it, as though there's something underneath. Ward Zero reacts instantly. The tone shifts, swelling louder, trying to bury whatever they're hearing. But it's too late. You know by the flicker in their gaze that the other voice, the one beneath the hum, has already taken root. You step forward, lowering your voice. You have to go through. And they shake their head. It's such a small movement, but it feels like a crack splintering across glass. The hum wavers, then surges so violently that the walls tremble. You've never felt it push this hard. The black floor ripples like water under the force of the sound, and for the first time, you feel something like uncertainty coil in your chest. They turn to face you fully. What happens if I don't? You've never been asked that question aloud. For a moment you think about lying, telling them there's nothing else. But Ward Zero has taught you the cost of lies in its domain, so you tell the truth. You stay here. Their lips twitch in what could almost be a smile. Then I stay. The hum roars. The walls pulse outward, stretching unnaturally before snapping back. The reflection on the floor begins to break apart. Not vanish, but fracture. Pieces of it float just beneath the surface, drifting in slow circles. You take a step toward them. You don't understand what that means. They don't answer. They don't have to. You can see in their eyes that they've already decided. Ward Zero doesn't allow stagnation. The system is binary, door or no door, choice or disappearance. But if someone refuses to play, the air changes. It thickens, becomes almost tactile against your skin. The hum splits into 3 tones now, one of them low enough to vibrate in your bones. The floor beneath their feet darkens further, and for a brief moment you see something reaching up. Long fingers pressing against the surface from below. They don't move. The fingers push harder, distorting the reflection into something grotesque. The mirrored version of them turns toward you now, but its expression is wrong. The eyes are black voids and the mouth is stretched into a too-wide grin. The thing beneath the floor begins to rise. You know better than to touch them now. Once the floor decides to take someone, interference is pointless. Ward Zero doesn't forgive trespass against its will. The black water surface breaks soundlessly as a shape emerges. Tall, skeletal, its limbs too long, bending at unnatural angles. It doesn't climb out so much as unfold itself upward, dripping that same reflective liquid onto the floor. Where the drops land, the surface stains permanently darker. It reaches for them. You expect them to scream, but they just stare up at it, still calm, still unflinching. The hum rattles the air, but the creature makes no sound at all. Its hand, long enough to touch both walls at once if it wanted, brushes their cheek. The black spreads from the point of contact instantly, blooming across their skin like ink in water. They don't resist. They let it cover their face, their arms, their chest, until their entire form is the same depthless void as the creature's. Then, without warning, they're gone. Not taken down into the floor, not pulled into the walls, just gone. The hum cuts out completely. The silence that follows is wrong in a way that almost hurts. Ward 0 has never been silent before. You stand in the stillness, staring at the empty space where they stood, feeling something unfamiliar crawl at the edges of your thoughts. You realize, with a weight you can't shake, that this wasn't a failure for Ward 0. It was an experiment, and it just learned something new. The hum returns slowly, like a breath drawn after too long underwater. But now it sounds different. There's a second voice in it, faint, distorted, but undeniably theirs. The next time someone refuses, you know it won't try to stop them. It will invite it. And you're not sure which side you'll be on when that happens. The first sign comes 3 days later. You're standing in the observation room, the one lined with narrow windows looking down onto the induction hall, when you realize the hum isn't coming from the walls anymore. It's coming from you. At first, it's so faint you think it's in your head, a leftover resonance from too many hours in Ward 0's lower floors. But when you press a hand to your throat, you can feel it, a soft, continuous vibration deep under the skin, as steady as a heartbeat. You try to clear your throat, cough, hum something else to drown it out, but the tone doesn't break. It's just there, constant, like you've been tuned to the same frequency as the place. And then you notice the others. The orderlies moving along the perimeter don't look directly at you anymore. They keep their heads down, eyes sliding away as soon as they meet yours. One even steps back when you pass too close, as if your presence radiates something they can't bear to stand near. Ward 0 is changing you. It's not subtle. The reflections in the polished black floor no longer match you perfectly. They're delayed, moving a fraction of a second after you do, the lag so slight most people wouldn't notice. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Sometimes the delay grows to nearly a full breath, your mirrored self staring at you just a beat too long before obeying. The new arrivals feel it too. You bring in a patient, a wiry man with hollow eyes and trembling hands, and the moment you step into the induction hall, he freezes. He looks past you toward the glassy surface under your feet, and his lips part in silent recognition. When you prompt him forward, he doesn't move. He just whispers one word: Keeper. You've never heard anyone call you that before, but the way he says it, reverent, fearful, sends a cold ripple down your spine. You don't correct him. Ward 0 doesn't correct him either. The induction proceeds differently. There's no binary choice this time. The black floor shifts, forming a long, narrow corridor instead of the usual pair of doors. The hum in your throat deepens without your control, and the man follows without a word, his bare feet leaving no sound on the liquid, smooth surface. At the far end of the corridor is something you've never seen before, an archway made of light. It's not bright. In fact, it's dim, barely enough to outline its shape, but the glow feels alien in a place built entirely of shadow. The man hesitates before it, glancing back at you as if for permission. You don't remember nodding, but you must have, because he steps through. He doesn't vanish. He burns. Not with fire, but with that same dim light, his skin becoming translucent until you can see the threads of him. Nerves, veins, sinew, stretching and twisting as the glow swallows him whole. The hum in your throat peaks, filling your head with pressure. And then the arch collapses, the light gone as though it was never there. The corridor seals behind you. Ward 0 has never shown you this trick before. When you return to the upper floors, you find small changes that weren't there before. A door where there wasn't one yesterday. An extra step in the staircase to the records hall. The filing cabinets are labeled in a script you've never seen. The characters angular and sharp like broken glass, and the faces in the photographs. The staff portraits on the main wall have always been a constant. Black and white, unsmiling, taken decades ago but still pristine. Now, half of them are gone. In their place are blurred, shifting smudges that never resolve into human form, and at the far left there's a new one. You. It's not an old photograph. It's you as you are now, eyes slightly too dark, skin holding the scars. At faint reflective sheen of the lower floors, But there's something else. The background isn't the hospital wall, it's the black floor. That night you dream of the archway again, but this time, you're the one standing before it. The hum is louder, closer, wrapped around your ribcage like a second skeleton. The light pulses in the arch, waiting. You want to step forward, but when you try, your reflection moves first, passing through before you can stop it. You wake with the taste of metal in your mouth and the sound of dripping in your ears. The next day, the changes accelerate. Doors open for you without a touch. Hallways that were dead ends stretch on into unfamiliar territory. And always, the hum in your throat guides you, turning your head subtly toward places you've never been. You find a room without windows, its walls covered in tally marks. Hundreds of them carved deep into the black surface. There's no furniture, no light, no sign of who made them, except for the last set, which are fresher, the edges still sharp. You count them without meaning to. 14. The number stays with you as you leave, echoing like a memory that isn't yours. 14 nurses, 14 days, 14 steps from the door to the archway. You understand now. Ward 0 isn't just feeding, it's building something. A sequence, a pattern, and you're no longer just an observer or a guide. You're part of it. The 13th piece, waiting for the 14th to arrive. That night, you don't sleep. You sit in the observation room, watching the induction hall below, the black floor gleaming in the dim light. The hum inside you matches the hum in the walls perfectly now, no difference between them. When the next arrival comes, you don't wait for instructions, you lead them directly to the floor. Ward 0 doesn't resist, it follows. The clock in the records hall begins ticking backward on a Thursday. You don't notice it at first. The second hand moves normally, smooth and steady, until you realize you've been standing in the same place for several minutes and the time is earlier than when you walked in. You watch the minute hand retreat, each movement a soft, deliberate recoil. When you look away, everything else keeps pace. The nurse passing by in the hallway stumbles mid-step, her coffee spilling in a perfect arc. But instead of shattering on the floor, the cup rises back into her hand, liquid reforming into a smooth surface. Her eyes don't register confusion. She simply continues walking, as though nothing happened. You test it. You step out into the corridor and drop your pen. It clatters to the ground, then jumps back up, landing perfectly in your palm. You turn the corner into the main wing, and the lighting fixtures hum softly above you, their flicker reversing. Patients move with a strange marionette-like rhythm. Every few steps, they jerk backward, retracing their own motions, then resume as though nothing had interrupted them. Ward 0 has begun folding time, and with the folding comes the first reappearance. It happens in the cafeteria, of all places. You're passing through the empty rows of plastic tables when you see her sitting alone in the far corner. Pale face, sharp cheekbones, hair pinned tightly back. The features match perfectly with a missing person photograph you've seen 100 times in the archives. Margaret Hales, one of the 14 nurses. She looks up at you as though you've just walked into a conversation she's been waiting to have. There's no shock, no fear, only recognition. "You're late," she says. Her voice is wrong. It's too calm, too even, like the words were rehearsed 1,000 times. You don't sit down. You don't move closer. "Where have you been?" you ask. She smiles faintly, and for a split second her teeth are reflected in the tabletop before her mouth opens. Not where, when. Then she blinks, and she's gone. The cafeteria's empty. The air smells faintly of antiseptic and ozone. Over the next days, the sightings multiply. Not just the nurses, though you see all 14 at different moments, always alone, always in strange corners of the hospital, but patients you know for a fact died years ago. A boy in a cast wheeling himself down a hall that hasn't existed for decades. A woman you admitted last winter appearing in the records hall wearing a uniform style last used in the 1940s. And they're not ghosts. You can hear their footsteps. You can smell the antiseptic on their clothes. One of them even hands you a folded note, and when you open it, you find your own handwriting inside, in ink that hasn't dried yet. The 14th completes the circle. The hum inside you is louder now. It doesn't stop when you speak. It vibrates under every word, making your voice feel heavier in your own ears. When you stand in the induction hall, the black floor ripples before you even touch it. The place is sinking with you. It's not just time that's folding, it's identity. You catch your reflection in the observation window and see someone else's eyes staring back. At first they're just darker, more sunken, but then you realize they're not yours at all. They're Margaret Hales's. You shut your eyes. When you open them, they're yours again, mostly. That night, the corridors change while you walk them, not subtly. Doors swing open into places that should be across the building. Staircases spiral downward into hallways you've never mapped. You pass through the maternity ward and step out into the morgue. The sound of dripping follows you everywhere, even when you can see no source. And the nurses, they're walking the halls again, not all at once, never in groups, but enough that you see them every few minutes. They don't interact with each other. They don't even acknowledge the patients. But they look at you every time, their heads tilting slightly, eyes catching the light in a way that makes your stomach twist. One night you follow one of them, a tall woman with hollow cheeks and the faded name tag, E. Winters. She moves without hurry, without hesitation, as though she knows exactly where she's going. She leads you down into the lower levels, past the locked wards and the unlit corridors, until you're standing before a door you've never seen. It's made of the same black material as the floor, smooth and lightless, with no handle. She stops before it, looks at you, and whispers, 14 steps. Then she turns and walks back the way you came. You count the distance from the door to the observation platform above. 14 steps exactly. The next day, the hospital feels thinner. The walls seem to breathe, expanding and contracting in a rhythm you can almost match to your own pulse. The hum in your chest resonates with the building, and when you walk the hallways, you feel the air bend around you. By evening, the line between past and present is gone. Patients from 1923 share rooms with patients from this morning. Conversations loop, repeating word for word until you answer differently, at which point they change entirely. A doctor who died 50 years ago hands you a clipboard and asks for your signature. When you sign, you notice the date, August 17th, 1910. The paper is warm. You don't remember dropping it, but when you look again, it's gone. In the induction hall that night, the black floor forms the archway of light again, but this time, you're not guiding anyone else. The nurses stand in a semicircle around it, their faces lit from below, shadows stretching impossibly long across the walls. Margaret Hales steps forward, her reflection moving out of sync by 2 full seconds now. The 14th arrives tonight, she says. You realize she's talking about you. The hum peaks, drowning out every other sound, and the walls around the hall seem to flex inward. The arch pulses, the light dim but insistent, like something breathing on the other side. And then the door in the black wall opens. Not for them, for you. You stand before the open door, and for a moment your mind refuses to process what's beyond it. It isn't darkness. It isn't light. It's something in between. A shifting haze, alive with movements you can't quite focus on, like a film running forward and backward at once. The air pouring through is warm and metallic, and when it touches your skin, it feels almost sentient. It adjusts to you, tastes you, decides whether to let you in. Behind you, the semicircle of nurses stands perfectly still, not breathing, not blinking. Margaret Hales is closest, her shadow cast across your feet like a net. You don't turn to look at her, because you know if you do, her face will be wrong in some way you can't handle yet. The hum inside you is deafening now, not sound exactly, but vibration in your bones. It feels like you're being tuned to a frequency that only exists on the other side of that threshold. You take the first step. The floor under your shoe doesn't sound like tile or wood, or even the black glassy surface of the induction hall. It sounds like nothing at all. It swallows the sound of your footfall completely, like you're stepping into a place that refuses to acknowledge physics as you know it. The haze bends around you as you move forward. It isn't random. It's parting, curling away in deliberate spirals, almost like it's making room for you. Shapes flicker in the fog. Sometimes they're people, nurses, patients, a child with a bandaged head holding a toy rabbit, but other times they're things you can't describe. Elongated silhouettes with too many joints, figures that seem to be reflections of you, only taller, or younger, or missing details of their faces. You glance back once just to orient yourself, but the door is gone. The semicircle of nurses is gone. There's only the haze now, stretching endlessly in all directions, lit by a dim, sourceless glow. And then you hear the whispers, not around you, inside you. Threads of sentences slip through your mind, half-formed and tangled together. 14 steps. Time is the wound. The sequence is you. Each one arrives with a pulse of warmth at the base of your skull, like someone's tapping on the inside of your head. The voices are familiar, but not because you've met them. It's because they're yours. They're speaking in the exact cadence you use when thinking. The shapes in the haze move closer. One of them, a woman in a nurse's uniform so faded it's almost colorless, reaches out, her hand trembling slightly. You flinch back, but she doesn't touch you. Instead, she points to something far ahead. You squint. At first, it's just a deeper darkness in the fog, but as you walk, it resolves into structure, massive, angular, rising high into the haze until it disappears from view. Its surface is the same black material as the floor of the induction hall, smooth and lightless, and in its center, carved deep into the wall, is a circle. Not a painted symbol, not an etching. It's an actual hole, perfectly round, leading into absolute void. You step closer, and you see movement inside it. Not from within, but around it. Time itself seems to coil around the circle, seconds and years slipping over each other like ribbons in water. You see yourself entering the hospital for the first time. You see the 14 nurses standing in the induction hall, but flickering. Sometimes they're patients, sometimes they're strangers, sometimes they're all you. Your chest tightens as you realize what you're looking at. This isn't a doorway, it's the sequence itself. The endless loop of disappearances, appearances, substitutions, and erasures. And you're standing at its center. The hum is unbearable now. Your vision shakes. The whispers braid into one voice. Step through, and the circle closes. Step away, and the wound stays. Open. Your mind races. If you step through, you'll become the 14th in truth. The sequence will lock, the nurses will be complete, and Ward 0 will... What? Rest or expand? You don't know. If you step away, maybe you stay yourself, but you also keep the wound open, which means time will keep folding. The nurses will keep appearing, people will keep vanishing. The haze pulses and the black wall leans toward you. Or maybe you're being pulled toward it. Your hands are shaking. You don't remember deciding to raise them, but now your fingertips are brushing the edge of the circle. It's warm, almost hot, like the skin of something alive, and then you see them. All 14 nurses standing shoulder to shoulder in the haze. Their faces are calm, but their eyes are locked on you with unbearable weight. Margaret steps forward, reaches out, and places her hand over yours on the circle's edge. Her skin is colder than anything you've ever felt. "You were always the last," she whispers. Something in you understands. Not with logic, but with the deep stomach-drop certainty of memory returning. You have been here before. You've touched this wall before. You've made this choice before. And maybe you never chose differently. The hum peaks, and the world outside the haze, the hospital, the wards, the years, blurs into a smear of colors and shapes. You can't feel your feet. You can't hear your breath. There's only the circle, the nurses, and the knowledge that whichever way you move next, there will be no going back. You close your eyes. You step.